Well, good evening, folks. Thank you for coming on board for this evening's presentation. And again, if someone could drop just a little note into the question panel and let me know that you're hearing me. I don't mind talking to the wall, but the wall has started to ignore me. So, oh, there we go. Sounds like someone out there is hearing me. Thanks, Dave. Got it. And thanks, Brenda. So tonight's discussion is making sure I got the recorded starting. Yep, everything's in order here. Tonight's discussion is about the topic of relationships. And I have to admit that for most of my life I was confused by relationships. I couldn't see them. I could see the other person, but I didn't understand the space between myself and others. And so to me it was a whole world of mystery and in some cases the source of suffering. And it was only in my growth and understanding of non-duality that I began to even suspect that there was something going on here beyond the apparent separation of beings by bodies, time, and space. And so our exploration tonight is really going to be more of a self-exploration, but we're going to find out that relationships are actually a very integral part of our becoming ourselves, who we truly are, not isolated, separated beings, but beings that share a very common essence, a very common mind, and a common spirit. And that which unites us is so much greater and has so much more potential for growth and for joy and for freedom than the things that we assume divide us. So that's really our theme here tonight, is looking at our commonalities and looking what it is that actually connects us, not only in our personal relationships, but in relationship with everything in our world, everything we perceive, everything we see and experience in this life. So the quote at the beginning here, "We are all equal beings and the universe is our relationships with each other," was actually the quote that really got me wondering, is there more to relationships than I had assumed? And this comes from one of my favorite books from the past called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment by Golis. Still a wonderful book full of many gems and pearls. And of course, I like the lazy part too. So let's see. Trigger this page turn here. Bear with me, folks. Here we go. So what we're going to be looking at tonight, generally speaking, is what are relationships? How is it that we conceive of them? We're going to look at something called special relationships. And if any of you out there are students of A Course in Miracles, you're going to notice some of the terminology that I'm using here is actually directly from A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles is a unique thought system, a document that came through some clinical psychologists a few decades ago. And what's unique about it is its ability to communicate the principles of what we call non-duality. And non-duality is simply a state of awareness where the opposites, again, that divide and separate us, dissolve into a greater sense of all-pervasive oneness or truth, and that only what is real and what is not real is an illusion, and that there really is no gray zone between truth and illusion, between love and fear for that matter. So it's a whole new vista, a whole new way of thinking about our experience in the world, as our default has seemed to be, particularly in the modern age and in the Western world, a foundation of duality. And duality, of course, is just the idea that we and everything we perceive coexists with an opposite. And that opposite is sometimes compatible and is sometimes challenging and is at the root of most of our conflicts, if not all of them. We'll be talking about the holy instant, which really is just a term to describe the decision in the moment to let go of time, to let go of thought, memory, expectation, and to be fully present in each and every moment as a key skill, you might say, to approaching relationships. We're going to be looking at one problem and one solution, which I really appreciate that we can reduce the complexities and problems of our lives really down to very simple and natural ideas and concepts. it always seemed to me that if there is a universal truth, if there is some kind of a foundational truth to this existence, it has to be simple because it has to be for everyone. And even a child, truth needs to be accessible to all beings in order to be truly loving and fair. And so we're going to look at some of these simple ideas and how they can really help reduce the stress and complexity of life and relationships. We'll look at some practical ideas for putting these principles to work, and perhaps even the concept or the possibility of repurposing our relationships and our lives. So for tonight, I'm going to encourage you, and those who are also listening on this recording, just to relax, to breathe, and let the ideas that work for you settle in. If there are ideas here that don't work for you, just toss them out. That's okay. Again, there's no expectation that you have to agree with or even understand or believe everything we discuss here. But I do feel that there's going to be some gems for each and every one of us. Again, concepts and ideas, which is the realm that we're operating on right now, are only pointers to truth, as Eckhart Tolle reminds us, and that this truth that we aspire to is really beyond the realm of ideas and thinking. But thinking can bring us to the threshold of truth, and truth thoughts, you might say, can be a remedy for some of the erroneous beliefs, misunderstandings, and mistakes that we've made in the past. Again, these ideas describe universal principles that apply to everyone in all time and space. So let these ideas bring you to a place of feeling their meaning rather than comprehending or understanding them necessarily, ideally both. But it's the feeling that we get when we consider some of these ideas that is closer to the truth and the reality of who we are. So ask and you will receive what you need. So why don't we all just join together now in our inner sanctuary, our heart space, and simply devote this time together to receiving whatever it is that we need, and perhaps giving this time and our attention to whatever the divine Spirit, God, however you want to conceive of that, has to offer you in this time. And simply open your heart and open your mind to accept perhaps something new, something different. So the first question, and again, as I mentioned earlier, it took me a long time to figure this one out even, is what is relationship? Even the notion of relationship, I and you, this and that, is inherently dualistic. It's rooted in the concept or the idea that things exist in separation. And duality is rooted in the idea of separation from oneness. So every thought, for that matter, creates a relationship. As soon as you take an idea and put it out into the world or apply it to a perception, you've already created a relationship between yourself and that perception and that thing. So relationship really is the nature of our experience. Time, space, and bodies allow for infinite relationships. But as I mentioned earlier, let's try and reduce this down to some simple ideas. There really is only one true relationship, and all these other intermittent relationships are bringing us back to the memory or the knowledge or the experience of this true relationship. So let's look at one cause. You can call it creator. Again, you can call it divine. You can call it Big Daddy in the sky. It doesn't really matter, because that being, that essence, actually has no concept of itself outside of its own state of awareness of being. So one cause and one effect. Whatever it was that this prime creator created is the effect. Well, it turns out that the effect on this primary level is you and I and every being that thinks, lives, breathes, and exists, not as separate beings, but as a unified life form, as a unified expression or effect of the one cause. So when the memory of this first relationship was forgotten, infinite substitutions were born into the mind of the created. And of course, that was us. So each part within separation holds the hidden memory of oneness. And, you might say, who in their right mind would do this? Well, we did, but it wasn't necessarily in our right mind. The promise of relationship is in the healing opportunity it offers. So in other words, we chose the experience of separation because I suppose we could. And it was almost a childish whim wherein we, in a state of perfect oneness and unity with Prime Creator, the thought emerged, what would it be like? What else is there outside of this? What would it be like outside of this totality? And because of the power as the created one that we hold, that thought was given manifestation. That thought manifested at the Big Bang as a universe of apparently separated forms. It is through these forms, however, and in the relationship that still connects all these forms, that we can find our way back, in a way run the film backwards and get back to the memory and the knowledge of who we truly are before this experience. Healing, by the way, in this definition simply means a return to wholeness. And a whole relationship is simply one in which the separation dissolves, even if momentarily. When there's that glimpse, that glimmer of connection on a very deep level, and I know you all know what I'm talking about, when you meet eye to eye between the phrases, between the thoughts, and a light connects you, and there's a knowing. This is, again, when that separation dissolves. But until this happens, relationships by nature must mirror our separation. So if you think of your experiences in the world as a mirror, it's actually a very helpful analogy, because mirrors show us things we might not otherwise see. It's like when you're going out for the day and you check yourself in the mirror. And thinking of mirrors in terms of relationships, mirrors are good for seeing the beliefs we have about ourselves. So in other words, the people in our lives are going to give us back unconsciously the content of our own beliefs or projections, because our perceptions of the other are coming from ourselves and our assumptions and our conditioning. So relationships can thereby mirror our inner belief in separation, which again is the one problem we touched on earlier. The one problem is this gnawing sense that somehow we are separate and I have to make it on my own. I have to figure things out for myself. So if that is our state of being, then our relationships as mirrors are going to mirror back to us that sense of separation. But at the same time, mirrors can also, I should say relationships, can also mirror our knowledge, our memory of oneness. So in other words, relationships mean to us whatever it is we choose. And we can choose to see either our wholeness or our separation through our relationships. And that's why I suppose it's valuable to even have these discussions and to look at relationships in these terms, because until we recognize the problem in our relationships, what it is that's actually going on, we may not have the freedom to choose another way of seeing. So to break the spell of the mirror world, I must awaken to the fact that what I see is happening out there, I only experience here in my mind. In other words, the outer is always an inner experience. I don't really directly experience others. I only experience myself reacting to my image, my thoughts, and beliefs about others. I only experience myself reacting to my image, thoughts, and beliefs about myself. Or, to distill it even finer, I only ever experience myself. And owning that understanding is an indispensable step in our progress on the path of liberation. Until we take full responsibility for every experience, every outer experience, as being generated from our inner state of being, as being a reflection, being mirrored to us of our own state of being, then we will, how can I say, our attention will be divided, and we will easily fall into the false self roles of victimization, attacker, enabler, and all these other types of dysfunctionalities that we often take on in our relationships. So this is the beginning, folks. This is the point where we sit down and decide, you know, my experience of that other person, maybe that's all it is. Maybe all it is my experience. Once you own that, Then you might say, the groundwork to begin to change your experience, to choose to see things differently, to entertain different possibilities from a place of empowerment. So the value of relationships it is in relationships that I've given the greatest opportunity to see myself. And I learn as I heal or become whole, and so do my relationships. You know, in the West, we're so much about individuation and making it on our own and the self-made man and all this, that even in the realm of spirituality, we tend to lean towards navel-gazing and introspection as the path to wholeness. Not to say that those practices don't have a place, but ultimately where we prove these things to ourselves, where we receive the feedback that interchange is literally going on, is in our relationships. So my relationships pull me forward into recognizing both my small s self, or ego self, and my capital S self, my true self, my universal self. Healing relationships through forgiveness offers me the fastest road home to oneness. So the paradox here is, if we really are loving ourselves and we really put ourselves first, then we will do so through our relationships. But we can't put the relationship before ourselves. Otherwise, the relationship's purpose will be to keep us trapped in the small self. In other words, there's a healthy selfishness when the self that you are cultivating is your true self. And it turns out that the true self that you are is the same true self that all of your relationships are as well. So this is why your relationships can begin to mirror to you your growth and awakening to your true self, because you will be spontaneously awakening it in your relationships at the same time. So to own all my experiences requires that I see and let go of all defenses. Defenses are attack thoughts. They literally attack ourselves. We attack ourselves through our defensiveness, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. Denial, the victim role, etc. These are mental habits of the separated. These are the reactions to relationships that keep us in suffering and keep relationships a rocky path. I'm only ever defending the illusion of separation, however, and the false ego self. So when I fall into defenses, I'm really defending an image of myself that feels threatened, because my true self is not threatened by anything. Ego defenses ensure that relationships will mirror suffering. In other words, when we're caught up in the pattern of defending ourselves, we are really serving the ego's purpose of relationship. And the ego's purpose of relationship is to keep you in separation, is to keep you in suffering, and to keep you away from the knowledge that spells the end of the ego. So if we turn this around, defenselessness is strength. And in the Course of Miracles, it actually comes out and says, if I defend myself, I am attacked. In other words, when we go into defense, we are admitting our vulnerability. We are admitting our weakness. So let's look at some of these defenses. Again, these are classic ideas from psychoanalytic theory going back many decades, if not 100 years. Freudian, for that matter. So denial is one of the ways we deal with defending ourselves, and that is simply hiding from the light of truth by pretending it's not there. So how do we release ourselves from denial? Well, first of all, like all of these defenses, become aware of them as we're in them. And one of the ways you can become aware when you're in a defensive role is that you will feel attacked. You will feel victimized. You will feel the pain. You will feel a loss of peace and joy, which is your natural state. If you're in that state, chances are you are entertaining self-attack in the form of a defense. So the release from this is simply non-judgmental self-acceptance, and to relax into our experience and allow all things. No resistance is the mantra here. Displacement is another classic psychological defense where we attack a less threatening target projecting blame or fault-finding. This is where we displace our inner feeling of pain and separation onto something or someone else. And again, the release from this is in the acceptance of harmlessness. Again, if I defend myself, I am attacked. Full responsibility for my experience. Here's a couple more classic defenses. Intellectualization. This tends to be a rather male defense, male-oriented defense. We tend to go into our heads and overcomplicate things. We avoid our feelings by rationalizing or getting involved in endless problem solving, over-involvement in details and analysis. In other words, keeping the whole situation moving in our heads and not allowing ourselves to drop into the honesty of how we're actually feeling. So when we're in that defense, when we're in that mode, again, simply let go of the struggle. Recognize that you're only doing this to yourself. Take a breath. Open the heart in silence. In other words, take your attention from the head, literally, and bring it down into the body. As Eckhart Tolle talks about in his work on relationships, listen with your whole body. Be fully present, not just your head. We tend to be imbalanced in the modern world, over-analytical, too much language and not enough languishing, if that's a good analogy. I don't know if that's the right use of that word. But projection. Now, projection is actually how we create our outer experience. In other words, the world around you is a blank screen. It's just a jumble of energy in the form of atoms and molecules and substances. And what gives it any meaning whatsoever is the projector, which is you. So projection makes perception. There really is nothing going on outside of you other than what you have labeled as your experience. And failing to see the source of your experience within. This is what we do when we project. So again, we come back to self-responsibility. All I experience is myself. And we desire peace over conflict. You know, when we put that simple desire out, when we sense the discomfort of the moment, and we just surrender. We say, you know, I'd rather be at peace. The divine hears that. It's like an alarm bell that goes off in the spirit world, and the divine goes, oh, someone's open, someone's available, and peace will rush in the moment you make room for it. And it just comes from that little turn of the will, that little moment of decision. You know, this feeling sucks. Or here we go again. I don't want to go through this pattern again. There has to be a better way. There has to be an option for peace. And again, once we activate that will, the entire universe rushes to our side. Now let's look at the topic of anger, because anger is something that comes up in many relationships and, as we know, can be from mildly building walls of silence to outright violence. And there are schools of thought that say, you know, anger is a natural human emotion and you should let your anger out and go punch a pillow or something. In the Course in Miracles, again, which is a non-dual thought system, gives no room for illusions. It actually comes right out and says, anger is never justified. It always involves the projection of separation fears. And as we are learning, these fears are really based on nothing, because the separation that we fear and that is at the root of so much of our pain and suffering, in truth, never happened. It only happened on the level of the mind. So anger is based on irrational premises, such as you believe you can be attacked. Now, if this is from the perspective of the ego, then yes, of course, the ego can be attacked. Why? Because it is so weak and because it is so insecure and it is built on a false foundation and knows it. But who you really are is immortal, invulnerable. You are light. You are the substance of creation. Nothing can attack that. Another irrational premise is that your attack back is therefore justified. Well, you attacked me first. You threw the first punch. And that you are not responsible for your anger. Again, we go back to the classic defenses of displacement and projection. You know, you made me, he made me, she made me. Well, nobody made you do anything. So, and then the craziest belief, which we see reflected in our governments and in the world scene right now, is that somehow attack makes me safe. Yes, everybody's happier when we attack. Let's attack. Now we're safe. Uh-huh. So the sane answer to anger is that you, as spirit, cannot be attacked. Let that settle in for a moment and just own that possibility. Own the possibility. Well, look at your life. Look at all the attacks that you have sustained in your life. All the people that dissed you, all the disappointments, all the criticisms. Where are they now? And has it really affected your ability to be fully present to yourself as spirit? No, not at all. They're meaningless. So you know this. You know that as spirit you cannot be attacked, and that attack has no sane justification. Nobody claims that this world is sane, by the way. You are responsible for what you choose to believe, to think, and act upon. Again, there's that notion of ownership. Demonstrate your own perfect immunity, which is the truth in you. And even when you criticize yourself or accept the criticism or attack of others, I'm not talking about constructive criticism here, I'm talking about ego-based attack, but you only ever attack your own invulnerability. So you cannot either hurt or be hurt. Okay, this is Spirit's view. This is the view from non-duality, where only truth is true. You cannot either hurt or be hurt. So can you see how that takes you off the hook? That you don't have to play the anger game, you don't have to play the victim game, or you don't have to play the conqueror. We're free once we take responsibility. So recognizing defenses is the first step in letting them go. Again, the temptation is to judge ourselves. The ego will judge you for recognizing the ego. So observe yourself protecting the ego as protecting nothing. And observe how taxing this is on your energy. Oh, it's so much work to keep up the facade, to continuously cajole our hurt feelings, and to constantly be on guard for the next attack. So much work and so stressful. Simply consider that in the moment, this discomfort may be giving me a healing opportunity. This discomfort, this sense of the lack of peace in this relationship may be mirroring to me an aspect of my own mind that I have not yet recognized and released. So nothing you or anyone can say or do can change the fact of who you are. I've heard the saying, what you think of me is none of my business. I like that one too. Secure in my knowing myself as eternal spirit, I am safe to see you as the same, despite your behavior. All behavior is either an expression of or a call for love. Okay, this is a really good example of a non-dual statement. It wraps up the seeming separation between good and bad behavior and shows us where they are one, where they're unified. All behavior, and this is in yourself as well as in others, is either an expression of, that's what we call good behavior usually, or a call for love, what we called in the past bad behavior. This is the only way the divine recognizes you, as an extension of the pure and perfect love that created you. So therefore, it's not possible that anything you do be anything other than an expression of or a call for love. Love is behind all expressions of life. Now, to the rational mind, this is insane. But if this is true, where does that put the rational mind? And let's get right down to brass tacks, folks. We created the ego because we came up with the question, who am I? And why would we ask that question unless we forgot, unless we somehow lost touch with our true identity? So, am I a body? Does this define me? Is this what I am? A meat puppet? Do I exist? If so, there was a typo there. If so, if I'm just a body, do I even exist beyond the body? And when the body dies, what happens to me? Am I all the accumulated thoughts and beliefs about myself? Is that it? Or am I the life within the body, created immortal, innocent, invulnerable, at one with the spirit that created me? As a matter of fact, Is it true that I am so powerful I could even imagine a universe in which I am not? That I have the power through a simple whim to create a universe of separation to explore my concepts, to explore my ideas. So getting back to the simple idea of the one true relationship, which is creator and creation, the divine and you. And this is what we're getting back to, by the way, through our intermediate relationships, is this reconnecting with the one source that connects us all. The divine in you is mirrored in every healed relationship and simply waiting hidden in every other. There is one will in creation, and it lives and operates in every part. The will, or desire to remember and celebrate the joy of oneness, is behind all actions. Love is truly all there is. You know, it's easy for us to accept that, a 2-year-old acting out or crying or whining is simply calling for attention. They need a nap, they need their diaper changed, they need a meal, they need to be held. We don't have a hard time with that. But as that child grows up and becomes more mature and begins to act out, we lose that sense that this behavior is also a call for love. And it's true throughout the life path, throughout development. We're all little children in grown-up bodies, folks. The inner child within us still has a very limited vocabulary as far as expression goes. And so let's extend that kind, sympathetic attention that we would give that 2-year-old to all of our relationships, and see if that doesn't make a difference in how we perceive the behavior of those around us. Now, this next illustration here is so full of meaning. Again, some of you might recognize it as being part of what we call sacred geometry. It is so full of meaning, we could probably spend the whole program here this evening just talking about what this symbol represents. Like the Chinese say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. But in a nutshell, what this roadmap to me means is it's a way of conceiving of the nature of the overlaps in relationship. Think of the first circle, the one at the top is how it works for me anyway, as source, as the divine, pre-existing this universe. Okay, so all that is, the cause of all that is, and the effect of all that is in one unified state. And beyond that is pretty much impossible to describe what we're talking about here. But within that all that is, an idea emerged. What else is there? What more? What more is there to everything than everything? And that idea, again, because of the source of that idea in the created one, was given expression. And the second circle is symbolic of the movement of that idea outside of source. And this was us stepping out into the experience of separation, or at the Big Bang, the creation of the universe. This was us venturing out into the great unknown, and in a sense, perhaps feeling a little constrained by perfection. Now notice, however, that the second circle actually didn't truly separate. It kept one foot firmly rooted in home, where it came from, its source. It really only stepped out with one foot. And this is, of course, indicating to us the impossibility for us to truly separate from source. In other words, if oneness remains oneness, what can happen outside of oneness? Nothing. Everything's still contained within oneness. And so we actually truly still are at one with our source. We're still connected to all that is as an extension of that perfection. But our attention, our minds, our experience seems to be completely outside source. We seem to have stepped out into this vast nothingness upon which we project all of our fears and thoughts based on the assumption of separation. And so all the circles in the background, if you step back, you might recognize that these are also representative of what's called the flower of life. Now, the flower of life is a map of creation showing how that from this first separation, all other apparent separations spontaneously bubbled out like a big bubble machine. Okay? All of the separate parts of the universe took form in our minds as we accepted the state of separation. And yet, if you look at each and every circle, none of them truly did. They're still overlapping. And it's in the overlap of all of these relationships throughout all time and space that the return or the memory of wholeness, the memory of the fact that we never truly left home is sustained, is held. In other words, no relationship, no matter how you conceive of it or experience it, is outside of this connection, this overlap, this area where the oneness still remains the central fact of life, the fact of reality. And of course, you'll notice that that overlap, known as the Vesica Pisces, is in the shape of the eye. Now, I know it's in the shape of a football too, but I don't think that's relevant. So again, we see this overlap revealed in the forms of nature. And the symbolism of the eye, of course, is that this is where we actually see the truth, is in this area of connection or overlap. But no matter how far you go out into that endless sea of bubbles of relationships, the overlaps is what connects each and every relationship and provides the road home. So circle one, perfect oneness before manifestation, and the universe is the manifestation. Circle two is simply the result of the idea there must be something more or other than perfect oneness. And again, that was our idea. We need to own that in order to truly overcome it. Nothing was done to us. It all comes from us. And in the background, then we see the endless forms of separate relationships, but none of which truly left home. Okay? So the road home, in other words, in any relationship, in any time frame, by the way, we're not just talking about present moment relationships, even past and future relationships can be looked at through the same perspective. The road home is the overlap, the meeting point. And again, here we see the Vesica Pisces as illustrating this. Now, sacred geometry goes much further than these. These are just the two basic movements of sacred geometry, and yet they tell the whole story of our apparent separation and the reality that, in truth, we never left. We put one foot out in the universe of separation and created an ego to explain to us our experience, and we have the other foot firmly planted in reality, firmly planted in the immortal, invulnerable truth of our being. So now here's an interesting take on this Vesica Pisces, however. There's another layer of meaning, if you like, to this symbol. The scalar field or opening is the idea that when you have two equal electromagnetic fields, let's say generated by the sides of your brain, the hemispheres of your brain, where they intersect, okay, there is a cancellation or neutralization effect of those fields in the intersect, in the Vesica Pisces. And in metaphysics, this is referred to as a scalar opening. Now, scalar is simply another way of saying multidimensional, because nature abhors a vacuum. In other words, there can be no place where there is nothing. Something has to happen. And so when these two fields intersect and create this overlap zone, they literally create a space, you might say, where you have this connection through the holographic relationship of those two fields to the source of all relationships. The single eye of oneness versus the two eyes of duality, for example. A portal within all relationships that activates the memory of oneness. So when any two fields interact, now again, the principle is that the fields need to be equal, okay, so on the same vibration, you might say, which we all are as divine beings, by the way. It's only on the level of ego that we have differences, but also that they be oppositely charged in order for the cancellation to proceed. So one needs to be in the receiving mode, the other needs to be in the sending mode, or there needs to be some kind of reciprocal energetic charge between the two fields in order to create this opening. And this portal activation is the result of the divine will awakening in either one. So in other words, it only takes the intention and the focus of one circle entering into that field relationship with another to activate the awareness, to be aware, and to be able to step into that portal. within that relationship. So I'm just going to take a moment here to go over to the question box here. And again, if anyone so far has any questions or comments, again, love to hear from you. We'll just take a moment to address and clarify anything up until this point. Take a moment, and again, if I don't see any messages coming through here, I'll assume you all understand this perfectly or have fallen asleep. Either way, it's all good. Okay. Here we go. Again, I'll address questions again later if they come up for you. So now we're going to look at a concept that is a central part of A Course in Miracles' take on relationships. And basically, the Course divides relationships into what are called special relationships or whole or holy relationships. So let's first look at the special relationship, because this is the ego's version of relationship. And it's important that we recognize this in order to be able to make choices. So a special relationship is simply an ongoing relationship of either special love or special hate. People that we hold above our general sense of what relationship means, or below. Okay, so we create a hierarchy here. Either way, a special love or a special hate relationship, as far as the ego is concerned, the ego doesn't really care because they both accomplish the same thing. Both of these kinds of relationship are invested with need. And need is simply arising from this sense of lack and separation, the belief that somehow I am deficient, somehow I am less than perfect, somehow I am cast out of heaven for this decision to make, to have the experience of separation. So it's from this very deep unconscious sense of incompletion within ourselves that we seek satisfaction through relationships, through special relationships. Now, the challenge within special relationships, not to say that they can't be, on some level satisfying, but the challenge is that we get into this dependency and an unholy cycle of guilt, projection, and pain, particularly if both people in the special relationship are coming from a place of need. So, because neither one will actually satisfy the need of the other. The opportunity, however, in a special relationship, and again, special relationships are not doomed. They can be transformed at the snap of a finger once we make the choice. But the opportunity within a special relationship is to own your own experience. Again, coming back to that simple principle of self-responsibility, and to discover freedom through true forgiveness, and to restore wholeness within. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. So why is it that we are so attracted to these relationships? Why are they such a big part of our lives? Well, for one thing, they are among the ego's finest achievement. And for many people, they seem to be the last holdout where suffering still has a hold on us. These relationships hold us captive to the past, to judgment and fear, all feeding ego. A conglomerate of projections creates an inner image of self and other. In other words, we become more aware of our differences than our commonalities, and our differences begin to divide us. So, when you're relying on personality, which is complex and always changing because we're making it up as we go, and then you add emotion, you add feelings, which are very, how can I say, contrary to the conscious mind. Emotions are very seemingly unstable to the logical mind and can upset us, and we can be afraid of our own emotions. You throw that personality and emotions together, you get this incredibly complex scenario in special relationships. And of course, it's this complexity that has kept psychologists and counselors busy for decades now, trying to unravel the knots and strings of our stories. And of course, what I find when they unravel them, it's just more strings and more knots. And then if the other person in a special relationship changes, if all of a sudden they're not the person that we've been relating to, who no longer are interested in satisfying our needs or have moved beyond the need for the relationship, then of course we're threatened. We're the one that's left in the dust wondering what happened. Now, any special relationship can become a holy relationship. And here's the kicker, folks. It only takes one. That's right. Our assumption from the place of specialness is that unless both people change their behaviors and their thoughts, that this relationship is doomed. And of course, that keeps the counselors busy. But if relationship is simply a mirror of the mind, and you're the one having this experience, then you are exactly where you need to change your mind about the purpose of this relationship, to change the way you see and think about the relationship. And in that process, again, taking full ownership, you change your perception of that person, and that person begins to mirror back to you the changes you have accepted within yourself. And voila, the special relationship takes on a whole new depth, a whole new possibility, a whole new range of freedom opens up in that relationship that is now the experience of both of you. So the ego game, and again, it's very important that we don't give too much power to the ego, because the ego loves that, but simply recognize it for what it is and then simply dismiss it. But here's some of the favorite ego games we need to watch for in ourselves. I can be an individual without taking any responsibility for my experience. I didn't ask to be born, therefore I'm a perpetual innocent victim of life. All my pain is a result of something outside of me. Without a world and relationships, I'd be perfectly happy, we tell ourselves. But by attacking another, I keep myself safe. And the twisted logic of the ego ends up with the insane notion that war is peace. And yet if you look at the world, well, that seems to be the way many people believe. So what we often call love, it arises from this scarcity principle, this illusion that I'm not enough, that I'm somehow cast out of oneness in my experience of myself in the universe. So we seek others to fulfill us and are always disappointed. What we really want, where we really want to go, is back to that prime relationship and reclaim the joy and the wholeness. What we really want is to be acceptable to our Creator. And of course, the joke is we are. The Creator has no concept of sin or of less than perfection on the part of its creation. Its creation is nothing other than a reflection of itself. So the ego has convinced us, however, that this is impossible, because in turning things around and in the twisted logic of the ego, you did not reject God, but God rejected you. The ego also uses the body as a way to validate or attest to its sense of separation. In the Course, it actually said that the body is a projection of the ego as a way of proving to itself its separate existence. So the body attests to separation, and as spirit, we have and are everything. Okay? I know that's a huge statement. It's a non-dual statement. You either accept it or you don't. And if there's a glimmer of truth in this for you, I would say accept it, that you have and you are everything. But the ego wanted more than everything. So the ego sends the body on this mission impossible to seek fulfillment, to seek wholeness, but never find. That's right. The ego doesn't mind if you're a spiritual seeker. As a matter of fact, it'll give you all kinds of validation and reasons to be a seeker, because the seeker doesn't really, how can I say, believe that it can be perfect and reclaim that perfection now. It's always looking for it in the future. So the seeker is the one who is, someday I'll get there. I can feel it. The next guru, the next book, the next webinar that's gonna be it. And of course the ego loves that. The fact of the matter is you are it right now, and there's no reason to not accept that. Other than, of course, the logic of separation and the so-called logic of need. So the ego guarantees separation through pain or pleasure and disappointment. The key here is not to, again, look at the body or denigrate it as either good or evil. Again, that's just another dualistic perception, but to repurpose it, give it a new reason for being. From identity, from forming your identity, which, by the way, the body is a very flimsy identity because it's wearing out. Face it, it's subject to the physical laws of entropy, and one day it's going to fall over. Is that who you want to be? So repurpose the body from a means of identity to a means of communication. And the body is a great communicator. We communicate through language, we can communicate through our actions, we can communicate with our energy. And once we choose to communicate love and forgiveness, the body is actually an excellent way to do that. Plus, it looks like you're like everybody else. So the ego's love, again, we're talking about special relationships here still, is based on an unspoken bargain. You fulfill me, and I'll fulfill you. But neither feels fulfilled within, right, because we're coming from this lack. So the bargain usually ends in a stalemate or an all-out war of betrayal. And we actually think, subconsciously, what can I give you? How can I be offering to fulfill you as I'm feeling incomplete and unworthy? So we feel somehow less than honest when we offer ourselves to another as fulfilling their needs in a special relationship, because we're doing that out of our own lack of fulfillment. So what do we truly have to offer is what we ask ourselves. Therefore, I must deceive you in order to get what I need. And folks, this is not a great foundation for a whole relationship, but it is a great foundation for the continuation of suffering. Special love partners are set up by the ego to fail and justify our wrath. And of course, the marriage and divorce statistics are pretty good indicators of this dynamic. Our guilt made the special relationship necessary as a defense against our own sense of lack, and therefore the other is the symbol of my guilt, which we hate. If it wasn't for you, I'd not be aware of my emptiness, we reason. So the illusion of love actually masks the murderous ego's hatred of you, of life, and of the divine. That's right. So looking at special hate relationships, and of course these are the folks that we love to hate. It feels so good to hate that politician, to hate that opposing team, to hate that noisy neighbor. But here again we have just classic projection. We demand that everyone change but us. Okay? And enemies, knowing who I am against, knowing who I resist, protects me from seeing the source of guilt in my own mind. Again, from taking responsibility. So the only enemy here really is the mistaken choice to separate. That's all. And that's something we all have in common. That's something that actually connects all of us, is the one problem. So special hate ends up as them or us thinking, which then justifies our anger. I mean, look at the root of all war and war propaganda is to dehumanize the so-called enemy and to somehow justify murderous activities based on the concept of if I don't get you, you'll get me. So this really does, when you look at it from this perspective, it really does reveal the murderous and self-destructive intent of this ego program. Now, one thing about hate is it's always specific. We always choose our enemies very carefully, and we hold on to them as our special friends we love to hate. And yet love is all-inclusive. Love forgets no one. Love has forgotten no one. I think that's the title of one of Gary Renard's books. So that's the difference, folks, is that hate is very specific. It is very finely focused, because if we hated everything, then we'd have to admit we actually hate ourselves. So love, however, has no enemies. And love spontaneously includes, unifies, forgives, and heals all relationships. So the end of specialness comes between when those in relationships recognize their equality and their equal value. All relationships are between equals and are of equal value. Again, going back to Golis's original quote at the beginning. Special relationships only appear more complex. So in other words, we can look at special relationships in the context of relationship generally. All relationships are scripted by ourselves to bring us home, even the ones that cause us pain. That's right. It's all agreed upon on some level before we come into this life that we will encounter this person in that situation, and it is going to give us a choice point to either suffer or release ourselves through the recognition of our own responsibility, of our own projected guilt. So the ticket here in relationships is simply forgiveness, seeing spirit behind the ego's mask. Again, a simple willingness to recognize the behavior as a call for love. And knowing that you, on your human level, may not be the one to supply that love. That other person may not be willing or open to receive it from you, but spirit is always there, always available, and always willing to love that person out of their separation. And we do this. We exercise our, you might say, higher responsibility by cultivating what the Course calls a holy instant. Oh, Marina must have been fooling around with my computer. Where the heck did that come from? I'll just take a moment here to check again the conversation panel. Here we go. We got a question here. All right. So, yes, this is being taped, and I will be sending out the, well, actually, I'll be putting this recording on YouTube, and then on Facebook, I'll just put the link. How's that? The question that I have is, says Jen, is it possible that you could make the recording available for me to put on my Facebook? I think so. I think we'll be able to do this somehow. Thank you. So let's talk about this concept. Again, this is a very key element of A Course in Miracles, the holy instant. And think of the word as holy, not in a religious sense, but actually whole, like holistic. When we suspend thought, we suspend time and separation, okay? So in other words, thinking alone binds us to the past. Because every thought you entertain is based on the experience of that thing in the past, right? Your impressions, your feelings about it, whatever. So thought really is a time-bound activity. It keeps us chained to the memories of the past. And yet, relationship is always experienced in the immediacy of this moment. Why would I want to pull out an old roadmap to tell me where I am in the present? So we release when we suspend thought, okay? And it's not as hard or difficult as you might think. It's just where do you put your attention? And there are certain things you can do, like putting your attention on your breath instead of your thinking, for example. Putting your attention on the person who's expressing whatever they're expressing, and giving your full attention to that person also distracts you from thinking. Being aware of your own processes when you are in relationship and the movements of your own mind. Beginning to become sensitive to how we aren't truly connecting with that person necessarily, but we're planning the next defense. We're planning the next statement, or we're planning how we can validate and confirm this person's suffering. So when we suspend thought, we release all demands, cancel all contracts, and set others free, all in the silence of our vision of spirit. Now the ego will tell you, oh, if you're not thinking, you're not truly alive. If you're not thinking, well, there's nothing going on. I'm afraid not, because when you're not thinking, you are being, okay? And isn't that what we call ourselves, human beings? And yet we spend most of our time as human doings. So when we stop doing, stop grinding with our own interpretations, judgments, and projections, guess what? Something beautiful emerges, something peaceful, something clear, something open. So we offer the relationship, in other words, to a higher love than what we may be experiencing in the moment. We offer the relationship as we are fully present to the divine. And the divine, creator, God, whatever you want to call that, will see them for you. In other words, it's like you turn your eyes over to the divine and say, you know what, divine? I'm seeing this person as a royal jerk. How do you prefer to see them? Oh, that's right. You see them as a person who's acting out from a place of lack of love. They're feeling hurt. They're living out a childhood trauma, whatever. So that's how you see it. Okay. So in other words, we surrender the false responsibility to make anybody happy through our cajoling, through our actions, because you can't. It's not your happiness. It's not your ego that they're actually looking to for the solution. It's a cry within to be for themselves to remember wholeness. So here's a little bit of a graphic. On the bottom of the pyramid, you have a relationship, you and me, two people, right? And as long as the need is dictating the relationship, and as long as the individuals are body identified and operating from a premise of separation, then of course you're on the bottom of the pyramid, and that relationship bears the weight, the heaviness of this entire process. But when either one of this relationship decides to choose another perspective, maybe to see things differently, maybe to catch themselves in their habitual ego-based relating to that person, and offers that relationship to the holy instant, or prefers to open themselves to a different vision of what's going on here, that person connects with the divine. And the divine reminds that person that all that is going on here is love, either an expression of love or a call for love. And when one person makes that switch, goes up the pyramid, and connects with the divine, it is an instant invitation for the other to do the same. And you meet that person at the top, not as a separate human being, not as a personality with a past and a future separate from yours, but as an equal expression of the same source, as an equal expression of divine love. So you are an idea in the mind of Creator, as we all are. The idea is, of course, the created one, the so-called collective Son of God. You are an idea in the mind of Creator, and an idea only grows, increases as it is shared. See, the ego is afraid to give itself away because it knows it is a limited being and it only has so much to give. But as an idea of the Creator, as an extension of the mind of creation, the more you give, the more you receive. So we all come from the same idea. And another very key principle in the Course is that ideas do not leave their source. If I share an idea with you, it's still mine, but it now also becomes yours. It can only increase. So when you know you have everything, you will ask, what can I give, instead of what can I get? When you come from that place within yourself, where you've made that connection through your desire, and you begin even have a glimmer, a suspicion, that you are not the small self you believed you were, but there's something much greater going on here, you will carry that richness, you will carry that sense of infinite worth into every relationship, and you will be coming from a place of giving rather than receiving, which then it turns out are one and the same. So to exist, to merely exist, is to be in that state of separation. But to be in that state of being and full aliveness is oneness. And when one person in the relationship commits themselves to being fully in that relationship, the relationship itself is transformed. Again, it only takes one. And there is no lack or fear in perfect love. So fear only exists in time, right? When you're afraid of something, it's because you've applied a thought or a concept to your experience of what that thing was in the past. So fear only exists in time, but time is not real outside of our imagination. The only time we ever truly experience is this moment. This moment does seem to continue, however, and it does seem to have unique aspects of it that are always changing, but your experience is only ever now. Each present moment, therefore, is pristine and new. You can start life over any time you want, because the only time you experience is this moment. And if this moment is your decision point, then you have created a completely new future by deciding to start life over now. And this is true for our relationships as well. You can start a relationship over any time you choose to fully step into the now, suspend your thoughts, your assumptions, your projections, your judgments of that person, which again is just dredging up the past, ensuring that the past continue to dictate the present and the future. Just let it go. Take a breath. Be present. And think of this moment as the only time there is. This moment is the closest approximation of eternity that we have. so why not hang out in eternity? Spirit, truth, God, you are all changeless. These are the changeless realities that neither life nor death has any effect on. What changes, however, what is continuously changing, cannot be essentially real. If things can change so quickly and so easily, are they essentially real? So give this moment to the divine, and you immediately give the divine to your relationship. Again, it's an inner shift of intention, desire, and what do I want to experience in the moment. Miracles, which in A Course in Miracles, by the way, is simply, it's a mental thing, okay? The physical miracles, like the healings and all that, those are the effects of truly recovering union on the level of mind. But when we really join on that level of divine mind, this is the miracle. So miracles are the instance of release that you offer. Guilt, time, attack, blame, pain, all of those constraints and chains, they simply vanish. Time stands still, transformed into forever. And you have collapsed the chains of time. So when is this so-called holy instant talked about in the Course? Well, the Course itself says it is this in every instant, and it's the one you want it to be. It's whenever you remember to invoke it that it is. So be willing to let all littleness go. Defenses, attack, judgment, all keep the illusion of time and separation real. So, it really does come down to your thoughts are your fears. Because a thought, by nature, divides, right? When you look at an object and you think about it, what it means to you, and you label it, and it brings up all of these images and memories, your attention of all that is has now been reduced to a single point. And that reduction, that sense of separation that thought-based experience elicits, reminds us that we are separate, or of our belief that we are separate. So thoughts as you might say, an expression of the mind in a state of separation, ultimately create our fears. When we recognize all minds are one, then we seek to change no one. Why would you want to change perfection, in other words? So what about my thoughts? What about this constant sports commentator in the back of your brain? The holy instant will show you cannot know what is in your highest good. You have actually never known what's in your highest good. The good things in your life have happened in spite of your thoughts. Your thoughts are meaningless, okay? And I know this is a great affront to the ego, because the ego is highly invested in thoughts as being personal, as being important. But when it comes right down to it, we're only recreating the past. We're using an old paintbrush to create a new painting with our thoughts. Holding on to private thoughts shut off true communication. And we're about to, actually on this planet, discover that our thoughts are not private, that they actually exist in a thought field outside of the local brain and are pulled to our attention through our intention. In other words, thoughts don't arise from within, they arise from without, and we attract or magnetize the thoughts from the collective mind that we choose. So they're really not that private to begin with. The holy instant waits on your will, that is your desire, which is one with the will of God. So in other words, the will of the divine is to extend love. And we all have, because of our common source, we all have a spark of that fire within us. Now the spark can get pretty small, it can get covered over with rocks and boulders and wet blankets, but it's still there. It is immortal, it is eternal. Nothing could put it out. So that's the part of each other that we want to recognize, and we want to feed that flame. We want to recognize that the will that I have, the desire for peace, the desire for happiness, is the same will burning in the heart of everyone that I've ever related to. That we all want the same things because we come from the same source. And we all carry that same will. And that will is for us to know the source and us as one. In other words, that love be expressed, that love and creation continue forever through the divine creation, which is us. So becoming the silent observer of your own thoughts before you act, before you speak, Recognize the impulse to react, as you may have in the past, as simply a habit, as simply conditioning, and recognize that you do have a choice. Who do you want to relate to? Do you want to relate to this person as an ego? Well, fine, you have an ego too, and you can stay in that game. Or do you want to relate to this person as true self to true self? A much more peaceful and productive pathway, by the way. And if you choose the true self as your reference point, you will be rewarded with more, how can I say, clarity about your own true self. Because the true self is a shared experience. And again, the more you give away that experience, the more you give yourself to that experience, the more it extends. So where do thoughts go? Once you've had them, what happens to them? Well, thoughts of love, inclusion, forgiveness, and gratitude simply go back into the one mind, the creation, okay? That is, it blesses all of life and return to you through loving experiences. So in other words, your loving thoughts simply add, they're like rain on the landscape. They just bring more life and more increase as you extend them. Ego thoughts, however, of fear, guilt, attack, and pain, go to their source, which is nothing and nowhere. They go back to the source, this belief that we are somehow separate and deserving of suffering. And we now know that this is not true, that we have fallen for a deception that we chose for ourselves. So negative thoughts really go nowhere because they're based on nothing. They have no substantial nature in and of themselves. So they're really quite meaningless. They just fall to the ground like, I don't know, like pollution, I suppose. So again, your thoughts of fear are held or heard by your true self only as calls for love. So this is, again, how Spirit even recognizes our own negative thoughts as they come up as simply a cry for love. So let's see how these two concepts mesh, how we can fit together this idea of the holy instant, of choosing this moment to go into that state of connection with divine source, and how do we deal with our special relationships. Our fear, of course, is that without the ego, without our, habitual and conditioned ways of relating, that all will be chaos. The whole world will fall apart if I'm not myself, or at least my image of myself. But the fact remains, and those who have experimented with this and proven it, is that without the ego, all becomes love. That's right, because love is all there truly is. So we need to make space within ourselves for this love to grow. And love, like the symbol of the dove, is very powerful but very gentle, and it will not land where it is not welcome. So again, it behooves us to create a space within ourselves of welcome to the spirit of love. And this is where we get into the idea of spiritual practice, which I think we'll talk about in a moment. So the Holy Spirit knows that no one is special, and yet knows each of us as essential. So place the relationship, and whatever relationship is on your mind at this time, place your relationship in the divine care, and fear not for your own needs. Again, your imagined needs are your judgments of yourself as not whole. In the holy instant, you are free of the past. You see love is inside you, and there's no need to look outside yourself to guiltily snatch it from anyone. You join with God, and all others join with you. And Christ is simply the self each of us shares. Religion, of course, has ascribed Christhood to special individuals. But that special individual, 2,000 years ago, actually told us that we will all become this Christ, and that the return of Christ, which was predicted 2,000 years ago, is simply our collective awakening to our true self as love. So all separation vanishes as wholeness is shared. And this is the great hope, folks, that even on this insane planet that seems hell-bent on destroying itself, that the energy and essence of love is here now, emerging from the hearts and minds of those who have already accepted it, that will heal the wounds, that will heal the separation at the root of the world's suffering, and will do so decisively and completely. Okay, I'll just take this opportunity to check in again to see if there's any fresh questions. Not seeing any fresh questions there at the moment, and so we'll just continue here. So the one problem we talked about earlier, looking at all of these complexities that we create for ourselves, distilling it down to a very simple basic idea of one problem. All problems in any form go back to the one problem in the mind. And again, it is the belief in separation. Notice I didn't say the separation. I said the belief in separation. And it's the belief in separation that causes all conflict, guilt, pain, war, disease, you name it, it goes back to the belief in separation. And this grand illusion, again, think of the circles. Think of that first circle leaving the second circle. No, the second circle leaving the first circle, right? And it's sort of single focus on that outward experience, losing the memory that it actually still remains safe at home. This is the grand illusion. And it arose at once, just before the creation of the universe, but manifests in countless forms. So any solution that ignores the one problem will eventually fail. Any solution that focuses on anything other than healing the mind of this belief in separation is dealing with the effects of separation and not the cause. So the solution to this problem is wrapped up in the idea of this atonement, or the divine correction of the separation illusion. So this divine correction was given the split second after we chose separation. And from the perspective of the divine and this solution that was given, the separation never actually happened. In truth, what happened was we fell under the spell of our own desire. Probably one of the most accurate analogies is that we fell into a dream state. And the thing about dream states is that they can be very complex. They can be very convincing. No matter how bizarre a dream gets, as long as your attention is focused in that dream, it is your reality. It's only upon awakening that you even suspect that that dream was nothing but an illusion and that your real life was going on all along. This is how the divine looks at the universe, as our dream. And in truth, this universe of time, space, and objects only existed for a brief flash of inspiration. This idea went out and it came back immediately to its source because of its impossibility. But we invented time as a way to experience every nuance of this desire for separation. And so the instant universe, the universe that was really nothing more than a flash, an idea that had to be tried. For us, we were experiencing it over billions of years because part of the illusion of separation was the creation of time in our minds. The idea of separation was over, however, the moment it occurred, because it's not possible. Again, the foot that we left in reality still remains reality. And the part of us that stepped out of reality, of course, is the illusion. So this is the impossible dream, folks, that we are living. The dreamer fell asleep in time, space, and bodies. However, we still have that divine spark. And part of this divine correction or atonement is in the form of what the Course calls the Holy Spirit. Now, I know that has a religious connotation in the Western world, but the use of the term in the Course is simply as the divine messenger. That aspect of the divine that followed us even into our dream and marked us with the spark of the memory of reality. That's what we're talking about when we say Holy Spirit. So now, this moment, again, is the only time to awaken. We can't go back into an imaginary past or anticipate it in an imaginary future, because when we were there or when we get there, it's now again. So we might as well awaken now. True learning is simply remembering. And sometimes, in order to truly learn, we need to forget. We need to forget what this no longer serves us. We need to leave behind our misconceptions sometimes to get back to the simplicity of truth. Recognition, the word to recognize, means to know again. So when we recognize love, when we recognize truth, we're simply remembering something we knew but had forgotten. You know, we all want the same things. We all want peace. We all want joy. We all want prosperity. So why is it that we want these things? How would we know that we're even lacking them if at some point in time we didn't have them? You know, you don't miss something you never had. A lost object is only lost because at one time you had it, and then you lost it. So again, look at that inner burning desire we all have for joy, for peace and harmony, and recognize it as the divine will, attempting to wake up in your dream. So again, getting back to basic principles here, the first starting step, and going back to where we started this evening, recognize all experience is in the one mind. Okay? The universe is the movie screen, and all of your relationship in the world is the screen that we project from our minds. And know that this mind, in our experience, is split between truth and illusion, or spirit and ego. Exercise the will, which is neither spirit nor ego. Exercise the will through choice, and your greatest power is to choose peace over and over. And this is how we unlearn the illusion. Face it, if our will was powerful enough to create a universe out of a whimsical idea, the thought of what else is there, if we could do that with that thought, think what we could accomplish with truly focused thought on what is true, real, and loving. So what are your choices? Well, we always have these choices, but we're not always necessarily aware of them. But we need to ask ourselves at a certain point, what do I want? Do I want to be right, or do I want to be at peace? Do I want to bless or curse? Do I want to suffer or rejoice? Am I a lost wanderer or the perfect creation of the loving source of all? Do I want to wallow in guilt, time, and body identification, or be free to love? And do I want to expand and experience all that is, or contract into a tiny, fearful self? As only truth is real, you cannot bring truth to the illusion. Again, sometimes when we ask those questions, we end up trying to make a better illusion. We try to end up fixing ourselves and fixing the world and patching up the effects without daring to go to the level of cause. But fixing others and the world, although noble in intent, ultimately fails. Again, because we're not addressing the primary cause of our experience. Fixing effects does not address the cause. Focusing on effects, however, we convince ourselves we make them real in our minds, and so distract ourselves. Distractions only waste time and prolong suffering. So the kinds of truths we're talking about here are actually very simple. They're not complex, again, because they reduce a lot of our complexities down to basic principles. But they're not necessarily easy because of lifetimes of conditioning, that the body is real, that time is real. I have all these past lives I have to deal with, oh my gosh, and that our experiences in the world of suffering and deprivation and fear and anger, we call this the real world. Can you believe that? In the real world, we say. Well, again, when you're looking at a mirror, everything is backwards, okay? So this world, this tangible world of senses, of experiences, and even of relationships, is simply a dream, is simply a vision that we have accepted to reflect to ourselves our desire to experience separation. So if bringing, wait a minute, did we finish that last one? Let me double check here. So, yes, okay. So if we can't bring truth into the illusion, in other words, you can't take these principles and try to fit them into the insanity of this world. They just don't fit. And many philosophies and religions and well-meaning institutions of people have been trying for years to fix the world with these ideas, and it just doesn't seem to work. So if we can't bring the truth to illusion, maybe this is just another aspect of the mirror world. Maybe we need to flip it around and bring illusion to the truth. And we do this by being willing to challenge every thought and assumption that we have, and to become rather the awakened inner observer of our own processes, and then activate the will and the inner choice maker. Give the person that you're in relationship with or the situation in your life to the divine and ask to be shown what is real. Your 1% willingness to suspend the ego opens the mind to correction. So you can turn this earth experience, this hell on planet Earth into a very exciting and interesting Earth school experience where you enroll in all of the opportunities and in learning from every experience you have to remember yourself. So again, the whole world shifts. The entire universe hinges on your desire. Again, this is how powerful we are. So place the relationship on the inner altar daily and be at peace and trust the divine. This last two sentences is actually in reference to a technique called true prayer, where you actually visualize an inner altar and you put the situations in your life whereby you're losing peace, whether it's relationships or situations or memories or whatever, and you put this on an altar literally and you send the altar to the light. This is you telling the divine that you don't want anything in your life or experience to stand between you and your relationship with the divine. And in doing so, you give the illusion to the truth. And it's a beautiful way of releasing the false responsibility that we often take on to fix the situation on the ego's terms. So how do we, again, how can we apply these ideas and really step up to undoing the dream of separation? Because once you begin this process, you realize there's really not much else to do here. It's like, once you've had your own deep healing experience, you realize you want more. And you realize this is really all there is of value here. Many of you who are in the healing arts are in the healing arts because you've had your own healing experience. And you realize this, that this is the point, this is the purpose, is to wake up from this dream and thereby become whole. So let's look at the double negative principle here. The dream of separation is an illusion. So dream of your sovereign divine self within the dream. Wake up to the fact that you are in an illusion, and this happens to be your experience, and repurpose it. Repurpose your dream to a dream of awakening. This is akin to the idea of lucid dreaming rather than just regular dreaming. In a lucid dream, you as the dreamer begin to identify as the figure in the dream, and you wake up in the dream. And you are conscious as you dream that you are dreaming. And this changes everything. This puts you back in the seat of power, back in the seat of decision. Even as you dream, you're no longer affected. You no longer take your dream so seriously. The nightmare becomes a comedy because you realize none of it's real. It's only happening in your mind. So awaken to yourself as the dreamer even as you dream. Undo the dream within the dream until all awaken together as one. So this is how you can repurpose your life to serve your own awakening, and in the process, heal the world and heal your relationships. And we now come to the key principle of true forgiveness. So true forgiveness comes from seeing there's nothing in reality to forgive. Okay? The word forgive really means to overlook. So as we overlook the illusion behind the action, we recognize the meaninglessness of the action and as simply a call for love. What I see needing forgiveness in you is asking for forgiveness in me. In other words, if I have a perception that you've done something wrong, it's only because within myself I still hold guilt or the belief that I've done something wrong. Otherwise, I wouldn't even see it. It wouldn't be part of my experience if it wasn't within me to begin with. Again, all I ever experience is myself. So you, in the opportunities you give me through our relationship, when there's discomfort, when there's disagreement, are giving me, mirroring to me, an opportunity to heal the pain of guilt and separation that I still hold in my own heart. So yes, we do have the spark of divine will within us. Yes, we are divine creations, and yet we're also in a learning experience. We also appear to be in time, space, and bodies. So that implies that there's a process that we can also embrace while we appear to be here. And the process is our own awakening, and the pathway is the healing of relationships through forgiveness. And when we forgive another, again, we're only forgiving ourselves for the belief that this experience, that this quality, that this guilt that we perceive in another has anything to do with our reality. And as we offer the healing to our relationships, we are the ones that benefit the most. And of course, the opposite of that is if we refuse to give, We are the ones that suffer the most. So complete forgiveness is already yours. Okay, it's already been extended to you, and that we are awakening to it in time. I suppose if we awoke completely in this moment to our full, how can I say, birthright of divine awareness, we'd probably, evaporate in a ball of light. We wouldn't be much use to the other dreamers. So we're placed in the dream. We're left in the dream, you might say, but as an awakened dreamer with a new purpose and a new way of being, even while we still appear to be here. So the outcome, however, where you are headed in this process, which is the full realization of your divine perfection, is already given. That is the atonement principle, that the correction was given the moment the mistake was made. And that's all the divine sees. It was simply a mistake that can easily be corrected, and has been. So the end of the race has already been achieved. In a sense, you're already on the other side of the finish line, encouraging yourself to wake up so that you can enjoy the rewards. So simply ask to see and know what is already yours. This is a very high level of prayer, by the way. Need-based praying is, again, coming from the assumption that you are less than perfect and that there's something missing in your life, and so we pray for it. Asking to see and know what is already yours is a much higher level prayer, and it turns into what we would call communion, joining with that aspect of yourself and reveling in the joy and the freedom that you can experience even as you appear to be here. So peace is simply your natural state. It is the absence of conflict, okay? And it is the ego's enemy. Your peace, however, speaks volumes. The peace that you carry within yourself as you engage in relationships, as you enter into a room, speaks volumes, is palpable. On an energetic level, it is a reminder of those still caught in the dream of separation of their natural state of wholeness. So let your peace teach all through silence. Again, no need to conceptualize, no need to correct, no need to fix. Simply be in your peace, and you are communicating on the highest of levels. Your peace reaches out first to special relationships, transforming them into holy relationships. This begins right at home with your family, then extends out to the community, out to the nation, out to the world, and ultimately back to you as your divine self, as there is only one of us here. So the following is an experiential exercise, and again, I'll be posting this on YouTube, so if you need to get this information verbatim, you can get it from the YouTube. So I won't, in other words, go too slow. If you're trying to jot these things down, I'll simply direct you to that YouTube where you could do this. But you may use the following for understanding, or as an exercise silently with someone in mind, or perhaps most powerfully by sitting across and facing a partner and speaking the words. Relax, open yourself to the possibility of creating a holy relationship now. But to make this a bit more of a tangible experience, folks, why don't those of you listening and those of you hearing this on the recording, if you're comfortable with this, bring to mind a particularly troublesome relationship. And it doesn't have to be current. It can be a relationship from the past. But some relationship where when you think of that person, there's a loss of energy, a drop in your peace meter, you might say. So just bring that person to mind. And again, it doesn't have to be a huge thing. Even just a slight discomfort around that relationship is plenty to work with. So with that person in mind now, let's play along with this exercise. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to speak out loud, and you can speak this out loud if you like. There's something about the spoken word that I think is more powerful than just the thought itself. When we speak an intention, we by necessity join all aspects of the mind together, conscious, superconscious, unconscious. And there's also something about the vibration of sound that is also very powerful. So if you want to repeat this in your mind's eye to that person, again, I welcome you to do so. Every thought I have about you is coming from me. My thoughts are time-bound and incomplete and therefore not real. My thoughts only show me the past, which is the memory of unreal perceptions. All past, present, and future thoughts I have about you are not real. I am free to choose again how I want to see you. I want to see you for who you are. Who you are is no different than who I am. Because I am willing to suspend all thoughts about you, I am open to feel the oneness we share. The oneness I feel is the Holy Spirit, the presence of God in both of us. There's nothing you have done or can do that can change who you are as spirit, much less change me. We are one spirit, dreaming as one. All you have done or will ever do is an expression of the one love now awakening in you. I trust this spirit to love me forever. Who we are expands out from this holy instant of recognition to affect all beings in all times and dimensions. All creation celebrates this moment of recognition with us. I am the light of the world. You are the light of the world. Thank you for helping me awaken. So the simple choice to see relationships differently opens us up to a whole new life purpose. And again, as we talked about ourselves as already at the end of the finish line, all relationships ultimately are healed. This is the destiny of the return of this fragmented imaginary dream back to the state of conscious oneness. And we're in that process now. In this grand cycles of time, we are at an opportunity here to observe this return to wholeness now in very tangible, very specific ways on this planet. So it's a very exciting time. But remember, it's all an inside job. The world is only ever an effect, and the mind and its choices are the cause. Only the illusion of time and suffering prevents this experience now. So save time and reduce suffering today by simply choosing love over fear. So that is the end of this presentation. And for those of you on the call who have not taken our Soulful Communication course, again, we expound upon these principles during the 7-week program and also give you lots of opportunities to try these ideas out in real-life relationships, focusing on real-life issues. So again, if this type of approach to healing relationships appeals to you, you might want to consider looking at this course. We have another one coming up in April, I believe April 22nd or so. We're in the middle of one right now. Now this course also, just as an adjunct here, if you take the course, it satisfies the coaching requirement towards a license as a spiritual health coach. Again, for those of you who may be in the healing arts or simply like the idea of this credential, this is also something that can come as the result of taking this course. But nevertheless, again, how we can cultivate these experiences and this understanding is to devote ourselves daily to cultivating peace and silence by connecting within. Even 5 or 10 minutes first thing in the morning or last thing at night, where we simply review our experiences of the day, forgive those who are still holding judgments against us or us against them, and just desiring to be in that state of wholeness once again, to return to where we all came from, is a very, very powerful practice and will reap tremendous rewards in your life. So again, give us a look at the website, bluesunenergetics.net. I'd love to hear from you who have been on this call and who see this recording. And again, I'll open up the question panel here just one final time to see, okay, if there's any questions. Here we go. Oh, good. Got some questions here. So, Jennifer asked, what happens when there is brain dysfunction, alcoholism, hereditary issues, the more corporal issues? Well, if I'm hearing you correctly, how do these ideas apply to relationships where perhaps one person in the relationship is suffering from a deficiency or a deficit or some kind of a behavioral issue or inherited kind of a problem. And again, the recognition is that there are no accidents, that each and every life expression is a projection or an extension of a perfect design. And we can still relate to that person in whatever state we find them in, soul to soul. And again, in some cases, you'll find that folks who are dealing with some of these corporal issues actually grow spiritually more quickly. They have less conceptual baggage to keep themselves mired in the illusion of separation. So again, like anything else, every other person we experience is an image in our mind. And what that image represents to us is, again, an opportunity for us to examine and heal ourselves within. So if we have a judgment of a person as being deficient or incapable in a certain area, maybe we need to look at that and heal that within ourselves, heal that assumption, that is, and begin to relate to that person as an equal, soul to soul, heart to heart, life to life. I'm not sure if that answered your question, Jennifer, but that's the idea here. In other words, there really is no difference. And some folks say that being in a body that is caught up in perhaps some kind of congenital deformity or that type of a challenge, that often these are young souls or new souls that are trying out the human experience maybe for the first time. And so they've come into a situation where they will be supported and not have to, to dive fully into the human experience, almost like, going to check out the campus before you sign up. So that's also another perspective, that these may actually be young souls who are simply checking out the human experience. Would you please, Kathleen says, go over the concept of true prayer again? Yes. So the true prayer, and again, on our website, there's a recorded version of this that can walk you through the process, but it really is quite simple. You put yourself into a relaxed state, and you envision an ideal setting where you would be perfectly at peace, perfectly comfortable, and you can, create it however you want. You create a sanctuary in your mind. In other words, for me, it's a tropical beach with a beautiful sunset and a nice breeze. Give it all the sensory, settings that you want. I actually put a pina colada there just in case I get thirsty. And then you imagine a light out in the distance on the horizon. Not like a sun, however. This is a very different light. It's opalescent. It has all colors, and it's very alive and vibrant. And you recognize in your visualization that this light represents the divine. It represents source and destiny of all that lives. And part of you wants to be one with that light. You want to join with that light. But there are things in your life, issues, complications, desires, etc., that are keeping you in this moment from that connection with peace. And so you visualize in front of you an altar, and it can be as simple as a coffee table for that matter. And you put those things on the altar. You put the person you're at odds with. You put the bank account that you can't quite keep alive. You put the car that's, losing its radiator, whatever. You put all those things on the altar in whatever form you like. And you levitate that altar in your mind's eye, and you send it to the light. This is you symbolically saying, I no longer want these things to interfere with my peace. I don't want anything to stand between me and my divine connection. So I'm giving these to the divine. Now the divine interprets these offerings as, oh great, these are areas now where this person can accept a miracle. Now they're open to something beyond their own suffering. So the divine loves it when we give our problems to the light. And then now that you're free of the problems, you simply visualize yourself moving yourself, levitating yourself, and you move into the light. And you see yourself getting closer and closer and closer. And what you do in the visualization is you align the very center of the light, which is so blindingly powerful. It's beyond light. I mean, it's the clear light. The Buddhists talk about it, right? You align the center of your heart space with the center of that light, and you simply rest. You simply allow yourself to be embraced like the Divine Mother, right? You allow yourself just to nestle into the arms of your Creator, and you hang out there as long as you wish. And you can have an internal conversation with the Creator, or you can simply revel in the unconditional love that is always there for you. And then when you're ready, you simply, bring some of that light back with you. You've allowed your heart to fill with that light, so bring it with you. And as you come back into your body and into your human experience, reconnecting through the breath, etc., you simply come out of the experience. So all in all, that can take 10, 15 minutes or longer if you choose. But it is a very powerful way of having an experience, and of truly connecting, which is what we want. We want to return to that state of complete acceptance, complete love. Nothing you ever said, did, or had, or became, or has any effect on whatsoever. This is the reality of your being. So it's a very powerful way of accessing that experience of the divine. And it actually came through Ascended Masters. Gary Renard first described this true prayer in The Disappearance of the Universe, which is a wonderful resource for more on this topic. So I hope that answers your question. And I think with that, and given the time that we have right now, I'm going to stop the recording and say good night to all of you.